Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the history of Kenya, and this is a story that goes way, way back. I'm not talking thousands of years, I'm talking millions, all the way from the dawn of humanity to the complex, vibrant nation we see today.
So how does a nation's story begin millions of years before it even has borders or a name? It's a fantastic question, right? And to get to the answer, we have to rewind the clock, way back. Because, you see, Kenya's story isn't just about Kenya. In a very real sense, it's the story of all of us.
All right, so our story doesn't kick off with maps and flags. Nope. It starts with something much more fundamental: bones. The fossils dug up from Kenya's Great Rift Valley have literally rewritten the book on human origins.
Okay, just look at the timeline here. The sheer scale of time is mind-boggling. We're talking 6 million years ago. One of our oldest known relatives, a hominid named Tugenensis, was walking around this very region. Then, fast forward a bit, and you've got the world's oldest stone tools showing up near Lake Turkana. I mean, think about that. And then there's Nariokatomi Boy, an almost complete skeleton that gave us this incredible window into the life of Homo erectus. And it's not just ancient history. We now have evidence that our own species, Homo sapiens, had things like trade networks, complex social behaviors, over 300,000 years ago. It's just wow.
So, after being the stage for human evolution, this land became something else entirely. Let's jump forward quite a bit and see how it transformed into this incredible meeting point, a real crossroads for people coming from all different directions. For centuries, this region was a magnet for migration and culture.
What you really need to get from this is that the diverse Kenya we see today didn't just happen overnight. Its roots go deep. You can think of it like layers being added over thousands of years. First, you had Cushitic speakers arriving from the north with their cattle. Then you had Nilotic speakers moving into the massive Rift Valley. And then a huge game changer, the Bantu migration from West and Central Africa. These folks brought ironworking skills and new farming methods, completely transforming the area and paving the way for brand new societies. And this is what's so cool about what happened next. All these different influences started to mix, especially along the coast. And it wasn't just a simple blend, it was an explosion of culture. This gave rise to the Swahili civilization, a totally unique, indigenous Bantu culture that got supercharged by trade. They became a powerhouse in the Indian Ocean, building these incredible, wealthy city-states like Mombasa and Malindi.
I love this quote. It's like a time capsule. This famous Moroccan explorer, Ibn Battuta, shows up in the 1300s, long before Europeans arrived in force. And what does he find? A thriving, sophisticated city. He talks about their faith, their honesty, their beautiful mosques. So let's be clear, this was not some isolated backwater. It was a bustling cosmopolitan center of the world, with trade routes stretching all the way to Persia, Arabia, and yeah, even China.
But then, in the 19th century, everything changes. A new group arrives, and this time, it's completely different. The arrival of European powers wasn't just another wave of migration blending in. No, this was a conquest. It was a forceful takeover that was about to turn the entire society on its head.
And here it is. You can literally see the new reality being drawn onto the map. In 1895, the British Empire carves out the East Africa Protectorate. Why? Well, it was all about strategy, a power play against other European nations like Germany. And just like that, nearly 70 years of formal British colonial rule had begun.
Now, 15,000. That might not sound like a huge number, but don't let it fool you. The impact of these 15,000 white settlers was absolutely massive. They didn't just move anywhere. They took over the best, most fertile farmland, the area that came to be known as the White Highlands. And with that land came an incredible amount of political power.
This slide really lays it all out, doesn't it? It's like two different worlds. On one side, you have policies built for the settlers. They got the best land, they got a monopoly on profitable crops like coffee. On the other side, for Africans, especially groups like the Kikuyu and the Maasai, it was a disaster. They were kicked off their own land, forced to work for the settlers because of new taxes, and had absolutely zero say in how things were run. You can see how this would create some serious problems down the line. The resentment was building.
And that resentment didn't just stay under the surface. It boiled over. It exploded into a powerful and very complex movement to win back control. A fight for what's known in Swahili as Uhuru, which means freedom.
The biggest and bloodiest challenge to the British
was the Mau Mau Uprising. This wasn't a conventional war. It was a brutal guerrilla conflict fought in the dense forests and rugged highlands. And it was a direct reaction to all those colonial policies we just talked about, the ones that had taken so much from the Kenyan people, especially the Kikuyu. Okay, but here's where the story gets even more complicated. It's really tempting to see this as a simple us versus them fight, but it wasn't. This quote from Harry Thuku, an early nationalist, is so revealing. He's showing us that the Mau Mau Uprising was also a civil war within the Kikuyu community. It pitted radical fighters against more conservative Kikuyu and against those who were working with the British. It was messy, it was bitter, and it was a fight for the soul of the people, not just a fight against the colonizers.
So, in the end, the British military did crush the rebellion. They won on the battlefield. But here's the paradox. It was a massive political victory for the independence movement. The fight was so brutal and so expensive for Britain that it completely destroyed the myth that white settlers could rule Kenya forever. It was a wake-up call. The British were forced to bring in reforms, ease up on some of the economic rules, and most importantly, it put independence on the fast track.
And that fast track led right here. After all the years of fighting, both in the forests and at the negotiating table, the moment finally came. On December 12, 1963, Kenya achieved Uhuru. And in an amazing turn of events, the man who stepped up as the first leader was Jomo Kenyatta, the very same man the British had thrown in prison, believing he was behind it all, from prisoner to prime minister.
But, winning independence is one thing. Building a nation is a whole other journey. So let's look at what came next. How did this brand new country handle the massive challenge of governing itself? It was a road filled with incredible promise, but also some serious obstacles.
For the first few decades, Kenya's political story was really the story of two men, Jomo Kenyatta, and then after he passed away, Daniel Arap Moi. Under their leadership, the country slowly drifted from a multi-party democracy into basically a one-party state. It wasn't until the Cold War ended that both internal and external pressure forced the return to multi-party politics. But that transition was rocky, to say the least. It was a turbulent time, and tragically it all came to a head with the terrible violence that erupted after the 2007 election.
And that brings us to today. This really sums up the balancing act that is modern Kenya. The country is still wrestling with the ghosts of its past, right? Things like ethnic tensions that were often made worse during the colonial period. It's a constant effort to build strong, stable democratic systems while also trying to make sure that economic growth actually lifts everyone up, not just a select few.
So, when you look at it all, Kenya's past isn't something that's just in a history book. It's alive. It's a force that's actively shaping the country's present and its future. When you think about it, from being the literal cradle of humanity to a crossroads of culture to the turmoil of colonialism and the fight for freedom, it's been one long story of resilience and reinvention. And it leaves us with a huge question: how will all this history, with all its richness and all its pain, shape the next chapter for Kenya?